When we look back at the chaotic, blood-soaked legacy of Heisenberg, it is easy to focus on the titans who fell. We analyze every move Walter White made to build his empire, and we dissect the precise moment Gus Fring walked into a trap. We obsess over the tragedy of Jesse Pinkman and the absolute destruction of Saul Goodman's life. In a show that is widely considered a modern Shakespearean tragedy, the expectation is that everyone loses. If you play the game of meth empires, you either end up dead, in prison, or psychologically shattered beyond repair. That is the rule Vince Gilligan seemed to set in stone from the very first episode. But today, we are breaking down the massive exception to that rule. Because somehow, against every statistical probability in the Breaking Bad universe, two characters managed to walk away with their lives, their freedom, and a pile of cash. They didn't do it by being smarter than everyone else, and they certainly didn't do it by being more ruthless. In fact, they won by being exactly who they were. We are talking about the two greatest accidentally genius minds in Albuquerque, Badger and Skinny Pete. To understand why they are the only true winners, we first have to redefine what winning looks like in this world. Most people think winning is about the money stack in the storage unit or the territory you control. But look at the scoreboard. Walter White died alone in a lab, despised by his family, his millions largely gone or given away out of desperation. Mike Ehrmantraut, the most competent man in the room, ended up dissolving in a barrel because he trusted the wrong person for 5 seconds. Even Jesse, who technically escaped, spent months in a literal hole in the ground being tortured. That is not winning. That is survival at the highest possible cost. Then you have Badger and Skinny Pete. These two were treated as comic relief, the low-level street dealers who were supposedly too incompetent to handle the big leagues. But that incompetence was actually their ultimate shield. There is a specific kind of armor in being underestimated, and these two wore it better than anyone. While everyone else was trying to fly close to the sun, Badger and Pete were happy just hanging out in the shade, and that decision, whether conscious or just pure laziness, is the only reason they are still breathing. Let's look at the timeline. In the early seasons, they are right there in the mix. They are moving product for Jesse, they are part of the initial expansion. Any other character in that position usually meets a grisly end. Think about Combo. Combo was just like them, a loyal friend trying to do his job. But Combo tried to play the territory game. He stood his ground on a corner that didn't belong to him because he thought that's what a soldier does. And what happened? He got shot by a child. That was the reality check of the drug trade. Now contrast that with Badger. Remember the time Badger got arrested in Season 2? At the time, it seemed like a disaster. It was the moment that forced Walt and Jesse to bring in Saul Goodman. It felt like a massive screw-up because Badger sat on a park bench and totally misread a police entrapment sting. He famously asked the undercover cop if he was a cop, believing the urban legend that they have to tell you the truth if you ask. It was hilarious, and it made him look like a liability. But look at the long game. That arrest was the best thing that ever happened to him. It pulled him off the street. It put him into the system just enough to scare him, but thanks to Saul, he didn't do hard time. It effectively retired him from the dangerous side of distribution right before the cartel war really heated up. If Badger hadn't been arrested on that bench, there is a very high chance he would have been standing on a corner next to Combo when the rivals rolled up. His own foolishness was a survival mechanism. He failed his way into safety. And this establishes the pattern that we see for the rest of the series. While Walt is worrying about Gus Fring slicing his throat with a box cutter and Jesse is spiraling into a deep depression, Badger and Skinny Pete are debating Star Trek scripts and playing video games. They are the control group in this experiment. They show us what life could have been if everyone else had just chilled out a little bit. But it isn't just about dumb luck. As we peel back the layers, specifically looking at Skinny Pete, we start to see that there is a lot more going on there than just a burnout. There is a soul and a morality that the big players lost along the way. And to truly appreciate how they won, we have to look at the moments where they had the chance to break bad, and they chose not to. They chose friendship over ambition every single time. And in a show about betrayal, that loyalty ended up being the most valuable currency of all. If you think about it, the easiest thing in the world is to write Badger and Skinny Pete off as one-dimensional burnouts. We see them getting high, we see them failing to sell meth to recovering addicts, and we assume there's nothing going on upstairs. But if you pay close attention, the writers dropped massive hints that these two possessed a level of depth and humanity that the main characters completely lost. There is this incredible moment in Season 5, in the episode Hazard Pay, that completely flips the script on Skinny Pete. They are in a music store, buying heavy cases for the Vamonos pest operation. Badger is doing exactly what you would expect, just mashing on the drums and making noise. But then the camera pans over to Skinny Pete. He sits down at a grand piano, and for a few seconds, he isn't a street-level dealer anymore. He starts playing Solfeggietto by C.P.E. Bach. And he doesn't just play it, he plays it with genuine skill and emotion. It is a short scene, but it tells us everything we need to know. It implies a backstory that we never got to see. Somewhere in his life, Pete had lessons, he had discipline, and he had an appreciation for beauty. He has this hidden talent that has nothing to do with the criminal underworld. Contrast that with Walter White. Walt is a genius, sure, but he uses his brilliance to create poison. He uses his chemistry to dissolve bodies and ruin lives. Skinny Pete, in the middle of a drug operation, takes a moment to create something beautiful. It is a stark reminder that despite his lifestyle, his soul is still intact. He hasn't let the darkness consume the part of him that can appreciate art. And then there is Badger. If Skinny Pete is the hidden artist, Badger is the accidental philosopher. We have to talk about the Star Trek script. In the episode Blood Money, Badger goes on this long, rambling monologue about a script he is writing for Star Trek. On the surface, it plays like classic stoner comedy. He is talking about a pie-eating contest, and Spock and Chekhov. It is funny, and it makes the other characters roll their eyes, but listen to what he is actually saying. He starts talking about the transporter beams. He argues that when you step into a transporter, the machine technically disintegrates you. It takes you apart atom by atom, killing the original version of you. Then, on the other side, it reassembles a copy. It looks like you, it has your memories, and it thinks it is you. But it isn't. The original soul was destroyed the moment the beam hit. As Skinny Pete sums it up, it is just a color Xerox. This is not just a goofy fan theory. This is the entire thesis of Breaking Bad hiding in plain sight. Badger is unknowingly diagnosing exactly what happened to Walter White. Think about it. The Walter White we met in the pilot, the mild-mannered teacher who loved his family, he stepped into the transporter the moment he decided to cook crystal meth. That decision disintegrated him. The man who came out on the other side, Heisenberg, has Walt's memories and Walt's face, but he is a different entity entirely. He is the color Xerox. Badger identified the central tragedy of the show way before anyone else did. He understood that you cannot undergo a fundamental transformation without losing the person you used to be. And the fact that Badger and Pete refuse to step into that transporter, they refuse to become ruthless kingpins or killers, means they are the only ones who get to keep their original selves. They might be broke sometimes, and they might not get the respect, but they are still real. Everyone else is just a copy of a copy, degrading with every season. So when we look at why they survived, it wasn't just because they were lucky. It was because they were grounded. They had things they cared about outside of money and power, whether it was playing the piano or arguing about science fiction. That connection to their own humanity acted like an anchor. While Walt and Jesse were drifting further and further out to sea, getting lost in the storm, Badger and Pete were safely on the shore, just being themselves. And in a world as dangerous as Albuquerque, staying true to yourself turns out to be the ultimate survival strategy. And then we arrive at the grand finale, the moment where the entire series culminates in a desperate bid to secure a legacy. Walter White returns to Albuquerque, a ghost of his former self, needing to force Gretchen and Elliot Schwartz to launder his remaining money to his son. He tells them he has hired the two best hitmen west of the Mississippi. He claims they will be watching forever, ready to strike if the Schwartz family ever deviates from his instructions. It is terrifying. It is the ultimate power move from Heisenberg. But then the camera cuts. We step outside into the darkness and the illusion shatters. The legendary assassins are not Mike Ehrmantraut or the cousins. They are Badger and Skinny Pete, holding laser pointers they probably bought at a gas station. Let's look at the economics of this scene, because this is where the genius of their survival strategy really shines. We are going to do a little return on investment analysis. Walter White made $80 million. By this point in the timeline, he has lost his family, his health, his reputation, and almost all of that cash. His return on investment is catastrophic. He paid for that money with his soul and his life. Jesse Pinkman? He has nothing. He has been enslaved, tortured, and is completely broken. Saul Goodman lost his practice and his freedom, ending up managing a Cinnabon in Nebraska. Now look at Badger and Skinny Pete. For pointing two little red lights at a couple of billionaires for maybe 15 minutes, they walk away with thousands of dollars in cash. Hard currency, tax-free, handed directly to them by the most wanted man in America. And the best part? They faced absolutely zero risk. They didn't have to pull a trigger. They didn't have to smuggle anything across a border. They didn't have to cook anything in a toxic lab. They just stood in the bushes. This is the ultimate bluff, and it perfectly encapsulates why they won. While everyone else in the show was playing chess with their lives, betting everything on the next move, Badger and Pete were playing a completely different game. They were playing the long con of low expectations. And even in this moment, arguably their biggest payday, their humanity is still the loudest thing in the scene. They take the money, sure, but they don't feel good about it. Skinny Pete literally says the whole thing felt kind of shady, morality-wise. Think about that. Walter White just threatened to murder two people in their own home and feels nothing but satisfaction. Skinny Pete, the guy society has written off as a junkie, is the one questioning the ethics of scaring people. They are the only characters who end the series richer than they started, and they did it without killing a single person. In the high-stakes economy of Breaking Bad, that is the definition of victory. They managed to extract value from the Heisenberg empire without paying the blood price that everyone else had to pay. They took the cash, they kept their souls, and they went home to play video games. If that isn't winning, I don't know what is. If the original series showed us their luck, the movie El Camino showed us their heart. This is where the thesis stops being a fun theory and becomes an undeniable fact. When the credits rolled on Breaking Bad, Badger and Skinny Pete were just the guys who held the laser pointers. But when El Camino picks up, they transform into full-blown action heroes. Think about the situation. Jesse Pinkman has just escaped a literal neo-Nazi compound. He is the most wanted man in America. Every police officer, every news helicopter, and every federal agent is looking for him. He shows up at Skinny Pete's door looking like a wild animal. He is scarred, terrified, and driving a stolen car that is actively being hunted. Now, in the world of Breaking Bad, the smart move here is to slam the door. The smart move is to say, "Sorry man, I can't get involved," and call a lawyer. That is what Saul Goodman would have done. That is probably what Skyler or Marie would have done. Self-preservation is the rule of the land. But what do Badger and Pete do? They don't even hesitate. There is zero calculation. They pull him inside, they cover the car, they feed him, they let him shower, they give him a place to sleep. In a universe defined by transactional relationships, where everyone asks, "What is in it for me?" these two operate on a completely different frequency. They operate on pure, unconditional loyalty. They are the only people left who see Jesse as a human being, not a liability or a tool. And then comes the moment that elevates Skinny Pete to legendary status. The police are closing in. They know the El Camino is in the area. The LoJack is pinging. The walls are closing in fast. Jesse is panicking. He thinks it is over. This is where Skinny Pete, the guy we all laughed at for getting robbed by junkies, suddenly becomes the most tactically brilliant mind in the room. Under extreme pressure, he improvises a plan that is smarter than anything Heisenberg came up with in the final season. He realizes they need a diversion. He tells Badger to take his own car, his beloved Ford Thunderbird, and drive it south toward the Mexican border. He knows Badger can ditch it and hitchhike back. It is a decoy. It pulls the police attention away from the immediate area. Then comes the sacrifice. Skinny Pete looks at the El Camino, the car that links Jesse to the massacre, and says he will take the heat for it. He tells Jesse to take Badger's Fiero, a car that nobody is looking for. Pete decides to keep the El Camino in his driveway. He constructs a cover story on the fly. He will tell the cops he bought the El Camino from Jesse because he always wanted one. He knows he is going to get arrested. He knows he is going to get interrogated by the FBI. He knows he is risking prison time for aiding and abetting a fugitive, and he does it anyway. He hands Jesse a wad of cash, essentially giving away the money he made from the laser pointer job, and then he does something that breaks your heart. He takes the beanie off his head, the hat that has been his signature look for the entire show, and gives it to Jesse to help him blend in. He looks Jesse in the eye and delivers the most important line in the entire franchise. He says, "Dude, you are my hero and shit." That line recontextualizes everything. To the world, Jesse is a monster. To the media, he is a meth cook. But to Skinny Pete, Jesse is a survivor. He is someone who went through hell and came out the other side. Pete isn't judging him for his crimes. He is honoring him for his resilience. So, look at the scoreboard again. Badger successfully executes the diversion. We know from the radio chatter that the car was found at the border, meaning Badger got away clean. He is out there, free. And Skinny Pete, he faces the music. We see him in the teaser trailers getting grilled by the cops, and he doesn't crack. He doesn't give up Jesse's location. He holds the line. By taking that fall, Skinny Pete essentially launders his own reputation. He goes from being a low-level dealer to a street legend. He is the guy who stood tall against the feds and saved Jesse Pinkman. He bought his friend a new life at the cost of his own freedom, and he did it without blinking. That is not just winning, that is heroism. In a story full of villains, Badger and Skinny Pete turned out to be the only real good guys left. To fully grasp the magnitude of their victory, we have to place their ending side by side with the titans of the drug trade. We need to look at the scoreboard of the Albuquerque underworld one last time. When you break it down, the data is undeniable. Start with the king, Walter White. He entered the game with the specific goal of providing for his family. He leaves the game dead on a concrete floor. His family is destroyed, his son hates him, his wife is a social pariah, and his brother-in-law is buried in the desert. He achieved power, absolutely, but the cost was total ruin. His return on investment is negative infinity. Hubris killed him. Then you have Gustavo Fring, the ultimate professional. He spent decades building a perfect cover. He had the distribution, the industrial laundry, the Chicken Brothers empire, but he couldn't let go of a grudge. His obsession with Hector Salamanca blinded him. He walked right into a trap because he needed to be the one to deliver the final blow. He lost his life and his entire organization in a single explosion. Revenge killed him. Even Mike Ehrmantraut, the man who supposedly knew all the angles, he died for nothing by a riverbank because he let his guard down for 5 minutes around a maniac. And the millions he saved for his granddaughter? Seized by the federal government. His legacy is zero. He failed the one person he was trying to save. And look at Saul Goodman. He ended up managing a Cinnabon in black and white before spending the rest of his life in a supermax prison. He lost his freedom because he couldn't stop running scams. Greed killed him. Even Jesse, who technically survives, leaves with nothing but scars. He has to look over his shoulder for the rest of his life. He is broke, traumatized, and alone. Now, look at our boys, Badger and Skinny Pete. They didn't have the hubris of Walt. They didn't have the vengeance of Gus. They didn't have the greed of Saul. They just wanted to play video games, play some music, and make a little cash. And because they aimed low, they hit the jackpot. They are the only ones in the entire criminal ecosystem who faced zero long-term legal consequences and walked away with a profit. In the brutal mathematics of Breaking Bad, every action has an equal and opposite reaction. If you push too hard, the universe pushes back. Badger and Pete never pushed. They flowed like water. And that lack of ambition, that refusal to climb the bloody ladder of chaos, is exactly why they are the only ones left standing to tell the tale. They prove that in a game of sharks, sometimes the smartest move is to just be a harmless fish.